In 40 years of clinical practice, the single most commonly missed diagnosis I encountered was not a rare condition. It was not something obscure or difficult to detect with the right training. It was depression. Depression in adults over 60. I watched it go unrecognized in primary care offices, in family gatherings, in the homes of people who loved the person deeply and still did not see it. And the reason it was so consistently missed was not negligence. It was something far more insidious. The way depression presents in older adults looks almost nothing like the way our culture describes depression. So families looked for tears and saw instead withdrawal. They looked for sadness and saw instead irritability. They looked for hopelessness and saw instead stubbornness. They looked for the textbook version, and the textbook version was not what was sitting in front of them. Today, I want to give you what I spent 40 years learning to see: the real clinical picture of depression in seniors, what it actually looks like, why it is so easily missed, and what you can do as a family member, a friend, or as the older adult yourself when you begin to recognize it. This conversation could change, and in some cases, save a life. My name is Dr. Harold Whitman. I am a retired clinical psychologist. I want to begin by saying something that I believe is one of the most important public health facts of our time and one of the least discussed. Depression is not a normal part of aging. I want to say that again because so many people, including so many medical professionals, have internalized the opposite belief without realizing it. Depression is not a normal part of aging. It is not something older adults should simply accept as an inevitable consequence of loss, illness, or growing old. It is a medical and psychological condition. It is diagnosable. It is treatable. And when it is treated appropriately, the response rate in older adults is actually very high, comparable to or even better than response rates in younger populations. The tragedy is not that depression in seniors is untreatable. The tragedy is that it is so rarely recognized in time. The research is very clear on this. The majority of older adults with significant depression never receive any treatment for it. Not because care is unavailable, but because the depression was never identified. And the reason it was never identified is exactly what I want to address today: the way it hides. Let me explain something about what we observe clinically. Depression in adults over 60 is a fundamentally different clinical picture from depression in younger adults. In a younger adult, depression often presents with tearfulness, visible sadness, statements of hopelessness, difficulty getting out of bed, and a subjective report of feeling depressed. The older adult rarely presents this way. Instead, what we see is a collection of symptoms that are easily attributed to other things: to normal aging, to physical illness, to personality, to grief, to stubbornness. And because these symptoms are so easily misattributed, the depression beneath them goes unaddressed, sometimes for years, while the person continues to decline. I am going to walk you through 8 specific presentations of late-life depression that I believe everyone over 60 and everyone who loves someone over 60 needs to know and understand. Some of these will surprise you. All of them matter. Presentation 1. Somatic complaints without a clear medical explanation. This is one of the most common ways depression first announces itself in older adults, and it is one of the most effective ways it hides. Instead of saying, "I feel depressed," the older adult begins to report persistent physical symptoms that do not have a clear medical cause. Chronic pain that moves around, fatigue that is out of proportion to their level of activity, digestive problems, headaches, a persistent feeling of being unwell that no test can explain and no treatment seems to touch. The family takes them to the doctor. The doctor runs tests, finds nothing significant, and reassures them. The older adult returns home feeling unheard and continues to decline. What is actually happening in many of these cases is that the depression is being expressed through the body rather than through emotional language. We call this somatization, and it is far more common in older adults than in younger ones. There are several reasons for this. Older adults, particularly those who grew up in eras when emotional expression was discouraged, often do not have a vocabulary for psychological pain. They learned, across a lifetime, that physical complaints were more socially acceptable than emotional ones. A man of 78 who grew up in the 1940s does not say, "I am struggling emotionally." He says, "My back is worse again." And unless someone knows to look beneath the physical symptom, the depression beneath it will never be found. There is also a secondary mechanism that makes this presentation so clinically significant. Older adults who present with somatic symptoms are almost always taken seriously by the medical system in a way that older adults who present with emotional symptoms are not. There is a painful irony in this. If an older adult goes to their primary care physician and says, "I have been having chest discomfort," they will receive an EKG, a referral to cardiology, and careful monitoring. If the same older adult goes to the same doctor and says, "I have been feeling very low emotionally, and I think something may be wrong with my mood," they are statistically far more likely to receive a brief conversation about life stressors, a suggestion to get more exercise, and perhaps a pamphlet about community resources. The medical system, despite decades of advocacy for parity between physical and mental health, still responds very differently to these two presentations. And older adults, who are perceptive about these dynamics, learn quickly which presentation gets them taken seriously. The somatization of depression is, in part, a rational adaptation to a system that responds to the body more readily than it responds to the mind. This does not make the somatic symptoms less real. Pain that accompanies depression is genuine pain. Fatigue that accompanies depression is genuine fatigue. But addressing only the physical symptoms while missing the depression beneath them is like treating the smoke while the fire continues to burn. Here is what I told family members who came to me concerned about a parent or spouse who had been complaining of unexplained physical symptoms for months. I told them to ask, very gently, one specific question. You can say, "I am glad we have been looking at all of this medically, but I also want to ask you something different. How are you doing emotionally? Not your body, you. Because sometimes when we are carrying something heavy inside, the body is the first place we feel it." That question, asked with genuine care and without urgency, opens a door that is otherwise almost always closed. Presentation 2. Irritability and anger rather than sadness. This is perhaps the most consistently misunderstood presentation of late-life depression, and it is the one that most often damages family relationships before anyone understands what is actually happening. The depressed older adult, particularly men, often presents not with tearfulness or expressed sadness, but with irritability, snapping, impatience, complaining, a short fuse that seems to have appeared from nowhere or that has been quietly growing for months. Family members attribute it to personality. They say, "He has always been difficult. He is getting grumpier as he gets older." They distance themselves from the behavior, and in doing so, they distance themselves from the person, at exactly the moment when that person most needs connection. What we observe clinically is that irritability in late-life depression is the emotional face of pain that has nowhere else to go. The older adult is not choosing anger over sadness. They are expressing, through the only emotional channel that feels available to them, a suffering that they cannot name and have not been given permission to express. I want to give you the exact words I recommended to adult children who were dealing with an increasingly irritable parent. You can say, very calmly, at a moment of relative quiet, "I have noticed that you seem to have less patience lately, and I am not upset about it. But I am concerned about you, not your behavior. You. Is there something weighing on you that you have not told me about?" The key to this script is the explicit separation of the behavior from the person, and the pivot toward genuine concern rather than criticism. Many older adults who were approached this way by a family member, in my clinical experience, broke down in tears within seconds. Because what they had been
waiting for, sometimes for months, was exactly that. Someone who looked past the anger and asked about them. Presentation 3. Cognitive changes that look like dementia. This is one of the most alarming and least understood presentations of late-life depression, and it is the one that causes the most unnecessary panic in families. A condition called pseudodementia, or more accurately, depressive pseudodementia, occurs when depression in an older adult produces cognitive symptoms that closely mimic early dementia. Difficulty concentrating, poor short-term memory, confusion, difficulty with word finding, slowed thinking, difficulty making decisions. The family observes these changes and immediately begins to fear the worst. They take the person to a neurologist. A brain scan is ordered. And sometimes, the depression beneath the cognitive symptoms is never even assessed because everyone is so focused on ruling out dementia that they forget to ask about mood. In my 40 years, I saw this scenario play out many times. And the critical clinical distinction, which I want every family member to understand, is this. In true dementia, the person is often unaware of their cognitive changes or minimizes them. In depressive pseudodementia, the person is almost always acutely, painfully aware of the changes. They volunteer them. They describe the difficulty. They are distressed by it. They say, "I cannot remember things the way I used to. I feel like my mind is slipping." This expressed distress, this acute self-awareness of the cognitive change, is often a clinical signal pointing toward depression rather than primary dementia. There is another important clinical distinction that helps separate the two presentations. In true dementia, cognitive difficulties tend to be consistent across contexts. The person has trouble remembering in easy situations and difficult ones, at home and in a clinical setting, when relaxed and when under mild pressure. In depressive pseudodementia, the cognitive difficulties are often more variable. The person may have a good day and a bad day. They may perform better when engaged and interested, and significantly worse when depleted or without stimulation. They may show surprising moments of clarity that would be unusual in a comparable stage of true dementia. These variations are not the family imagining things. They are real, and they are diagnostically meaningful. If you are a family member who has been noticing this kind of variable cognitive presentation in someone you love, please make sure that depression is explicitly assessed, not just assumed to be absent because the primary concern is cognitive. A geriatric psychiatrist or a neuropsychologist with specific training in late-life depression is often the most appropriate professional to make this distinction carefully. This does not mean that every older adult who complains of memory difficulties is depressed. It means that depression must be assessed alongside all other diagnostic possibilities. And if depression is treated successfully, the cognitive symptoms often resolve significantly or completely. I watched this happen in my practice. A patient who came in appearing to be in the early stages of dementia, after successful treatment for depression, came back to me 3 months later with dramatically improved cognitive function. The family, who had been preparing for a very different future, was stunned. The depression had been mimicking a disease that was not there. Presentation 4. Social withdrawal and loss of interest. This presentation is the one that most closely resembles the cultural image of depression, and yet it is consistently attributed to other causes in older adults. The older adult begins to decline social invitations. They stop going to activities they used to enjoy. They stop calling friends. They stop engaging with hobbies. They sit more. They watch more television. And the family, often exhausted by their own lives, quietly accepts the withdrawal as a normal consequence of aging. They tell themselves, "He is just slowing down. She has earned the right to rest," and the withdrawal deepens. What I want to say very clearly is this. Sustained withdrawal from previously enjoyable activities is not a normal part of aging. The research is unambiguous on this point. Older adults who maintain social engagement and continue to pursue meaningful activities consistently report higher well-being, better physical health,
Lower rates of cognitive decline than those who withdraw. When an older adult stops doing the things that once gave their life texture and meaning, and when this change is sustained rather than temporary,
This is a clinical signal that deserves attention. Here is the question I gave family members to ask. You can say, "I have noticed that you have not been going to your card group lately. I am not pushing you to go, but I am curious. What is stopping you? Is it that you do not feel like it, or is it that you do not feel like yourself enough to go?" That distinction between not feeling like the activity and not feeling like oneself is diagnostically important. And in my experience, the honest answer to that question reveals far more than any symptom checklist ever could. Presentation 5. Sleep disturbances that are dismissed as normal aging. Sleep changes with age. This is a medical fact. But there is a difference between the normal sleep changes of aging and the specific sleep disturbances that accompany late-life depression. And this difference is almost never explained clearly to older adults or their families. Normal aging sleep changes include going to sleep earlier, waking earlier in the morning, experiencing somewhat lighter sleep, and having slightly fewer hours of total sleep. What is not normal, and what is a frequent marker of late-life depression, is early morning awakening combined with an inability to return to sleep, accompanied by a specific quality of mood in those early morning hours. Depressed older adults very commonly wake between 3 and 5 in the morning, find themselves unable to sleep, and lie awake in a state of low-grade dread, rumination, or pervasive sadness. This early morning awakening, with its characteristic dark quality of thought, is one of the most reliable biological markers of depression in older adults. And it is almost universally attributed, by the person experiencing it and by their families, to normal aging, to needing less sleep, to the bladder, to discomfort. I told every patient over 60 who came to me to ask themselves this specific question about their sleep. Not how many hours, but what quality. Does the awakening in the early morning bring a quality of heaviness, dread, or sadness? Do the thoughts that come in those hours tend toward the dark? If yes, that pattern deserves to be discussed with a doctor, specifically in the context of depression, not just sleep. These early morning hours are when many depressed older adults are at their worst, and when many of the most worrying thoughts occur. Taking this symptom seriously is important. Presentation 6. Neglect of personal care, nutrition, and health management. This presentation tends to emerge when depression has been present for some time and has begun to impact the person's most basic self-care. The older adult who has always been neat begins to let their personal hygiene slip. The one who always managed their medications carefully begins to miss doses without concern. The one who cooked real meals begins to eat crackers and canned soup and calls it adequate. These changes again are often attributed to other things, to physical difficulty, to forgetfulness, to a desire for simplicity, and sometimes they are those things. But sustained deterioration in self-care, particularly when it represents a clear change from the person's previous standards, is a serious clinical signal. I had a patient, let me call her Dorothy. She was 79 when her daughter brought her to see me. Her daughter had noticed that her mother, who had always been impeccably groomed, had stopped washing her hair regularly, had started wearing the same clothes for days at a time, and had lost nearly 12 pounds because she was simply not eating. Dorothy herself, when I met with her, denied being depressed. She said she was fine. She was just not bothered about things the way she used to be. That phrase, "not bothered," is one I learned to listen for carefully in older adults. Because in my experience, it often meant the same thing. I do not have enough life in me to care about myself right now. Dorothy responded very well to treatment. Within 3 months, she was eating again, attending to her appearance, and reconnecting with her daughter in ways that moved them both. But the depression had been present, unrecognized, for over a year before it was finally named. Presentation 7. Expressions of hopelessness and death that are not taken seriously. This is perhaps the most urgent presentation on this list, and the one that families most desperately need to understand. Depressed older adults often make statements about death, about not wanting to continue, about feeling like a burden, or about life not being worth living. And these statements are very frequently dismissed by the people around them as normal talk for someone their age. They say, "Of course she talks about death. She is 82. He has just lost so many friends. She is just tired." But the research on suicide in older adults is sobering, and every family member of an older adult needs to hear it. Adults over 65, and particularly white men over 75, have among the highest rates of suicide of any demographic group in the United States. And unlike younger suicide attempts, which often serve a communicative function and may not be fully lethal in intent, older adult suicides tend to be highly planned, highly lethal, and completed at very high rates. There is something else about this presentation that I want every family member to understand, because it directly affects how these conversations unfold in real families. Older adults who are experiencing suicidal thoughts often do not use the word suicide. They use what clinicians call indirect suicidal ideation. They say things like, "I do not know how much longer I can keep going like this," or "I will not be a burden to everyone much longer," or "I am just waiting for God to take me," or "I have had a good life and I am ready for it to be over." These statements are not always expressions of suicidal intent. They can be normal reflections on mortality from someone who is at peace with aging. But when they are accompanied by other signs on this list, by withdrawal, by self-neglect, by hopelessness, by loss of interest, by the characteristic early morning darkness, they deserve to be taken very seriously and followed up with a direct question. The indirect statement is often an invitation. The older adult who says, "I will not be a burden much longer," may be testing whether anyone cares enough to ask what they mean. Failing that test, by changing the subject or dismissing the statement, communicates to them that no one is paying close enough attention, and they may stop offering even the indirect signal. When an older adult makes statements about not wanting to be here, about being a burden to everyone, about wishing they could go to sleep and not wake up, these statements must be taken seriously, every single time. The dismissal of these statements as normal aging talk is, in my clinical experience, one of the most dangerous mistakes family members make. Here is what I told families. If your older parent or spouse makes any statement suggesting that they do not want to continue living, or that others would be better off without them, you respond with these exact words. You can say, "I heard what you just said, and I am not going to pretend I did not. I want to ask you directly, are you having thoughts of ending your life or of harming yourself?" Many people fear that asking this question will plant the idea. The research is very clear. It will not. Asking directly does not create suicidal thinking. It opens the door for someone who is already there to finally be honest, and that honesty can save a life. Presentation 8. The masking of depression behind busyness, humor, or performance of wellness. This final presentation is the most invisible of all, and in some ways, the most heartbreaking. There is a category of older adult, typically someone who has spent a lifetime presenting a certain face to the world, who continues to perform wellness even while suffering significantly inside. They are the one at the family dinner who makes everyone laugh. They are the one who insists they are fine. They are the one who says at every opportunity that they have no complaints, that they are grateful, that they are keeping busy. And they are. They are keeping busy, relentlessly, often compulsively busy. Because the busyness is the only thing that keeps the depression from becoming fully visible, to themselves or to anyone else. I have sat with patients in this category who had been performing wellness for years, even decades, while carrying a depression that had never been named. When I finally provided a space in which the performance was not required, the relief on their faces was something I will never forget. They would lean back in their chair, and something would shift in them, and they would say something like, "I have not told anyone this, but I am exhausted. I am so exhausted from pretending." If you have someone in your life who is always fine, always busy, always performing, and yet something underneath seems off to you. Trust that instinct. The question I would offer is this. You can say, I see how much you do and how much you give. I want to ask you something, and I want you to know you do not have to perform for me. How are you, really? Not the version you tell everyone, the real one. That question, asked with love and without agenda, is sometimes all it takes. I want to take a moment now and speak directly to those of you who have been listening to these 8 presentations and recognizing yourself. Not someone you love, yourself. You may have been hearing this list and quietly checking boxes in your own interior life. The persistent physical complaints that have no clear explanation. The irritability that has replaced the sadness you cannot allow yourself to feel. The withdrawal from the things that used to matter. The early mornings that come with a heaviness you do not mention to anyone. The quiet, persistent thought that everyone would manage just fine without you. If any of this is you, I want to say this directly, and with everything I know from 40 years of treating people who felt exactly what you are feeling. You are not weak. You are not being dramatic. You are not simply getting old. You are suffering from something that has a name, that has treatments that work, and that does not have to continue. The first step is not therapy. The first step is not a prescription. The first step is telling one person, what you just heard yourself recognize. A doctor, a family member, a trusted friend. You can use these exact words. You can say, I have been listening to something about depression in older adults, and some of it sounded like me. I wanted to tell someone because I did not want to keep carrying it alone. That sentence, those words, that is the first step. And in my 40 years, I have watched that step, that one honest sentence, change the entire trajectory of lives. I want to connect everything I have shared today before we close. 8 presentations, somatic complaints without explanation, irritability instead of tears, cognitive changes that mimic dementia, social withdrawal from meaningful activity, early morning awakening with a dark quality of thought, deterioration of basic self-care, statements about death and being a burden, and the performance of wellness that hides real suffering. None of these are the textbook image of depression. All of them are the real face of it in older adults. And every person who learns to recognize these signs has the potential to change someone's life. I also want to say something about what happens after recognition, because I realize that many people who watch something like this feel the urgency of what they have learned and do not know where to take it. If you recognize these signs in someone you love, the first step is a conversation, using one of the scripts I shared today. The second step is a visit to a primary care physician, ideally with you present, where you explicitly name the word depression and ask that it be formally assessed. Do not assume the doctor will bring it up. In my clinical experience, they often do not, particularly with older patients who present primarily with physical complaints. You may need to be the one who says, I am concerned about depression. Can we talk about that today? You have the right to ask that question, and a good physician will take it seriously. If your concern is dismissed, seek a second opinion from a geriatric psychiatrist or a licensed mental health professional who specializes in older adults. The investment of that extra effort is small compared to the cost of missed depression in someone you love. I want you to think about one person in your life, right now, who might be showing one or more of these signs. Not conclusively, not with certainty, just as a possibility worth checking. And I want you to consider making one phone call or having one conversation in the next 24 hours. Not to diagnose them, not to confront them, just to reach toward them. To ask how they are, really. To make space for an honest answer. The research on depression in older adults is unambiguous. The sooner it is identified, the more completely it responds to treatment. The weeks and months of delay during which the depression is attributed to aging or personality or grief are not neutral. They are time in which suffering continues that does not have to. You have the power to shorten that time for someone you love. Use it. If this conversation helped you, I would be very grateful if you subscribe to this channel. I post new reflections every Tuesday and Thursday, and many of them address the specific emotional and psychological challenges of later life that are not talked about enough. And please remember, this is educational content. It is not a substitute for professional psychological or medical evaluation. If you or someone you love is showing signs of depression, please reach out to a licensed mental health professional or a primary care physician. And if there is any immediate concern about someone's safety, please contact a crisis line or emergency services without delay. Depression is treatable, but treatment begins with recognition. You have done the first part today. Thank you for spending this time with me. This is not an easy subject, and the fact that you stayed with it all the way through tells me that you care deeply about someone in your life, or about yourself. That caring is exactly where healing begins. Depression in older adults is not a life sentence. It is not a normal part of aging that must be endured in silence. It is a condition that responds to treatment, often dramatically, when it is finally recognized and addressed. Take care of yourself. Be gentle with the people in your life who may be suffering in ways they cannot name. And remember, the most powerful thing you can offer anyone who is struggling is not advice, not solutions, and not optimism. It is simply the willingness to ask how they really are, and to stay long enough to hear the real answer. We will talk again soon.